But you know, jobs would be lost in Detroit. That's true. But that's the case if anyone fails in the marketplace. If you prop them up, it's basically the government saying, you know, we've decided that we don't like your choices. You've chosen not to buy from Joe, you decide to buy from Bill. But we've decided that we like Joe. Joe should stay in business. So even though you preferred Bill's product as opposed to Joe's version of the product, we're going to tax you and give the money to Joe to keep him in business. And as a result of taxing you to support Joe, if what's left in your pocket after we've taxed you to do so, you can't buy as much from Bill, well, that's too bad for Bill. Now that's what's happening with this auto industry. Americans have preferred the Hondas and the Toyotas and the other many foreign-made cars. But the U.S. government said, no, we want GM and Chrysler to stay in business, so we're going to tax you and give your hard-earned tax dollars to GM and Chrysler to stay in business. And if it means that you don't have enough money to buy as many Hondas and Toyotas, too bad for them. Now, what would be the analogy? Think of it as a political election. And Joe and Bill are running for office. Right? Who's going to be prime minister? And you, the citizens here in Bahama, decided to vote for Joe instead of Bill. Joe gets 51% of the vote. Bill only gets 49%. Okay? And now somebody from the outside says, you know, we don't like the way you voted. Joe shouldn't be the prime minister, Bill should be. So we're going to take some of the votes that Joe got and give it to Bill, so Bill now has 51 and Joe has only 49. As a citizen of the Bahamas, expected to have the liberty and the freedom to determine who your political representatives are, who will hold political office, and be responsible for the laws over which you are governed. How will you feel about the arrogance of someone saying, we're now going to say that who you want to hold office as prime minister is one we don't like, and we're going to now put the guy in that you voted against? Would you consider that to be a free democratic society? You would consider it a violation, an abridgment, an overthrow of the democratic principle that the people ruled, at least as expressed through the democratic voting process. Well, that's the marketplace. You vote with your what, use dollars here? The
Bahamian dollars.
Okay, so we're all dollar people, just with different funny faces on them. Okay? So you're voting with your dollars. What product you want, and therefore who you want to be a successful entrepreneur. And when you don't buy someone's product, you're saying, bad job. I don't want to vote with my dollars and give you income. You're a loss maker. Learn to do something else, buddy. Because you're not worth it. Okay? So, one thing here. So as a consequence, this is the same thing as if someone from the outside changing your political vote. They're now saying, we don't like your votes with your dollars. We're going to take from you and have someone else win in the marketplace. Now, one other point about this. Economists have a concept called moral hazard. Now, moral hazard is just a fancy way that if somebody subsidizes your mistakes, covers your butt when you make a mistake, you're more likely to make the same mistake. Johnny runs his car into a tree. And he's irresponsible and has run up a huge amount on his credit cards and can't even meet anymore the minimum monthly payments. Now, mommy and daddy say, oh, Johnny, don't worry. We'll repair your car, and dad here, he's going to pay off your credit cards. Don't worry. What lesson will Johnny have learned from this? That if he drives irresponsibly again and runs into another tree, don't worry, dad will fix the car. And if he gets into huge consumer debt again and can't meet his monthly payments, don't worry. Dad's big, deep pockets will cover his financial obligations once more. In other words, you'll keep making the same mistakes. You don't learn from your lessons. And what should be the lessons? You should drive more carefully, because if you don't, you damage your car and you have to pay for the repairs, which means you have less money available to do other things you'd like to have done with. And you better not get over your head on your credit cards, because your credit cards will be canceled, and the opportunities of being able to put a bid on your credit cards will be taken away from you, and now you'll be confined to what your income every week or every month can really afford for you to buy. You'll learn your lessons to manage your budget better and to drive a little bit more carefully. But if daddy takes care of your car damages and your credit card bills, you never learn to be more responsible. So if the government says, oh, if you can persuade us that you're too big to fail, no matter how irresponsibly you manage your enterprise and fail to satisfy the consumers to earn a profit, Uncle Sam will come and bail you out. What lesson do businessmen in the marketplace learn? Don't worry to be irresponsible in the investments I undertake, less judicious and careful and judging what consumers want. If I suffer losses and I'm facing bankruptcy, Uncle Sam will tax my fellow Americans to pick up the tab. That's a bad lesson to be institutionally created, and that's why it's a bad policy.
Let me make one. To Dr. Ebeling, you're obviously not expected to be intimate with the Bahamas, but taking those examples locally, we have a national airline, Bahamas Air, and that's funded by taxpayers 10, 15 billion a year to keep it running. And we have a water and sewage corporation, which is probably the same. What's your comments on taxpayers funding them to keep them in business?
I think it's absurd. Yeah, I know that a lot of nations have their own national commercial airline, a sense of pride. Like, golly, we have our own Bahamian airline. That'll teach the rest of the world. And Americans act that way too, because, what? You mean General Motors and Chrysler? What if Ford also went out of business? Well, we'd have to drive only foreign cars. By golly, we're Americans. We have to have our own cars. Why? Who cares? This is an international division of labor. If Americans were to buy all of their cars from companies that are owned in Japan, Honda and Toyota, for example, who cares? They make the best car. And Americans would then pay for it by exporting some goods to Japan to pay for those cars. Because the Japanese, I can assure you, do not give them to Americans as a gift. They want to earn dollars. And why do they want those dollars? To spend it on something. Now, if you had everybody flying in and out of the Bahamas on some other airline company that was headquartered in another country, who cares? You would pay for the convenience of those things by offering tourist services or exporting something that would pay for the services of that airline company in the International Division of Labor. And you'd be getting it in terms of a lower price and possibly better quality than throwing all of this money at having your own national airline. Every dollar that is taken out of your pocket to subsidize that national airline is a dollar less that you have to take care of your own financial needs, to spend on things that are valuable to you, to help take care of the financial expenses of your family, or to put some money aside to do what? Maybe help yourself go through college. It's not a free lunch. The government doesn't have manna falling from heaven. Yes?
Does the same principle apply for education and healthcare?
Yes. I would argue that healthcare and education should not be and need not be in the hands of the government. Okay? I would bet, even though I know very little about the educational system in the Bahamas, that if I were to find out what people think of the public educational system in the Bahamas, it would probably be the same attitude that Americans feel about it in the United States. On general and on average, it's crappy. The kids don't learn. They come out of high school not knowing their reading, their writing, their arithmetic, and they're at a handicap. Okay? That's the result of government education. Now, I'm an advocate of private education. There's a whole series of reasons of that. But one of the reasons is that private schools only earn money, like any other private producer, if they make a product that satisfies you. Do you go back to the same supermarket to buy fruit if you bought once and you find out when you get the fruit home it's rotten? Forget it, I'm not going to go to that store again. It's in the incentive of the seller to keep what he's promised to be the quality of the goods and not disappoint you when you buy it. Otherwise, he doesn't get what keeps him alive. Repeat business. He wants you to come back every week, every month. Otherwise, his business dries up. Now, in a private competitive educational system, the only source of those who supply the education, the companies that provide schools and hire teachers, is if they deliver the goods. Education you want, in the quality you want, and because it's competitive, go to my school instead of his. Now, does